party. Yeah, okay. That famous incident where he asked about any interesting numbers, revolution, yeah. And I think the number was 1729. And he said that was the number of the cab. He said, oh, that's very interesting. Because it's the lowest number that can be expressed as the sum of two cubes in two different ways. Of course, there's a trick to that, because 1728 is 12 cubed, and everybody knows that. I know something I thought about for a long time. How does the why is the unconscious so reluctant to talk to you in language? Why does it prefer to show you movies and put up pictures, you know? But the idea is there, but it's not, the idea exists independently of language. When I'm talking to you, I don't know what I'm going to say next. I know what the subject is. Well, my brother Dennis says, and I think he's right after some reflection, that Falling Water is the absolute icon of American art in the 20th century. And this covers poetry, painting, everything. But I'm going to say something, and it will be in a coherent sentence that I will say and you will understand. It's not like some part of my brain is making up sentences and then whispering to me and then I repeat them. You know, that doesn't make any sense. And it's not like the next sentence I'm going to say to you, it's an idea, but it's not a sentence. Well, my brother Dennis says, and I think he's right after some reflection, there's one iconic entity, and this is it. I mean, there's nothing else that really comes. There's not a painting or a poem or another piece of architecture that has this stature. It's an astonishing thing. It's an idea, but it's not a sentence. And yet, almost immediately, I will form it into a sentence. It's like when you try and explain something to somebody and you say, let me think about that. How can I put this? Okay, put what? What's the this that you're trying to put? You're trying to put it in words, but you don't have them yet. But the idea is there, but it's not, the idea exists independently of language, and that's a problem. Karol. 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 It's a ring. Oh, okay, got it. And so he fell asleep in front of the fire, and he had this dream of the Ouroboros, the snake, with its tail in its mouth, and he woke up and he said, oh my God, the configuration of the benzene molecule is a ring. So the question is, well, if the unconscious figured that out, which it did, why couldn't it just say, Kekele, it's a ring? It's a machine for operating an animal. All right, mathematics. The unconscious is capable of doing some pretty puzzling problems in math. George calls it the night shift. You know, you're asleep and it's busy working away. When you're working a problem in math, you put it down step by step, and then if you kind of get stuck, you can go back over and see what you did. The unconscious can't do this. It's got to keep everything right there. That's baffling. I couldn't do that. Poincaré was stuck on a problem one time, and he went off on vacation with some friends. And as he was getting on the trolley car in a distant city, the equation suddenly appeared in the air over the head of the conductor. And they were so clear and everything, he didn't bother to write them down until he was back home a week later. But it was just, there it was. But it's more like the hoop snake, some symbol. But for the unconscious to actually hand you the equations, which it will do if you're just so dumb you can't figure it out. Mathematics is kind of fun. I had breakfast with James Drake, our artist friend, that we both know, and I mentioned that, we're working on a mathematics problem, sometimes for a long time, and then coming up with the answer. I said it's like a lost animal coming in out of the rain. You just want to say, there you are, I was so worried. It just seems to have a huge vat of stuff that it can take things out of. We don't know how huge it is or where it comes from. a lot of the religions, a lot of the serious, a lot of mathematics, a lot of serious thought about life started in the desert. There's something about the desert that seems to make people think about things. Is that true? I don't know, but it seems to be true. There's something about the desert that when I'm talking to you, I don't know what I'm going to say next. I know what the subject is. It was weird because we didn't know what it was. The only thing we knew, and there were only this was the first award. We showed up at the airport, and there was a liveried chauffeur with our name on a card and took us in a limousine up to this mansion, carried our bags in, and there we were. And it was just, we didn't know what, we got there in the afternoon, and then we all showed up for drinks at 5 o'clock or something. And MacArthur was dead by then, by a couple of years, but his lawyer was there, Bill somebody. He sort of welcomed us and everything. But there were 2 or 3 writers, poets, and whatever, and they came down, and they were all dressed and drugged and ready for entertainment. And when they saw these people standing around sipping white wine and discussing quantum mechanics, they were kind of, it wasn't what they had in mind at all. Yeah. But anyway, so Bill, he welcomed us, and he said, no, I understand that all of you are supposed to be quite bright, but I've had a chance actually to talk to some of you, and you're not as bright as you think you are. And I thought, that's a good start. The world's all that is the case, totality of facts, not of things. The world's all that is the case, totality of facts, not of things. The world's all that is the case, totality of facts, not of things, determined by the facts, and by there being all the facts, totality of facts determines what is the case, and also whatever is, okay, that's okay. The facts and logical space of the world. It's the reason why everybody loves Wittgenstein is not because of his theories of language, is that because they don't know what the hell he's talking about. They love him because he lived the life of a philosopher. He inherited a huge amount of money in his mid-20s, and he gave it all away. Why did he give it away? Because he didn't think philosophers should be rich. But people understand that. I've read a bit of Heidegger. Nowhere in there is there anything about the moral life, or whether that means anything. Or it didn't mean anything to him. He didn't consider it to be worth his attention, whereas Wittgenstein thought of nothing else. Grothendieck is one of the greatest mathematicians to ever live. He talks about the morality of mathematics, and you say, well, that's just kind of goofy. Well, it would be kind of goofy, except that he said it, so you have to pay attention. He doesn't say dumb things. Everything that he thought about had to do with whether it was right or wrong. When I'm talking to you, Falling Water is a beautiful house, but if you go inside, the first thing you see is a bunch of cheap plywood furniture. The interior of the house is just awful. There's nothing you can say about it except, that's really ugly, Frank. The facts and logical space of the world. It's like when you try and explain something to somebody and you say, let me think about that. How can I put this? Yeah, I think it has something to do with austerity. The next sentence I'm going to say to you, it's an idea, but it's not a sentence. And yet, almost immediately, I will form it into a sentence. Pauli really knew physics, and Heisenberg didn't, not compared to what Pauli understood. When they came to a problem they couldn't solve, Heisenberg would just take everything off the table. And Pauli would be saying, "You can't do this." He said, "Oh, watch me." Back then, people would write letters 5 and 6 times a day. Mail was delivered, half a dozen times a day in some places. And it was sort of like email. And they would always be going to conferences, and they'd be on a train going here, and the other one would be on a train going there, and they would write letters back and forth. And in one of Pauli's letters, he said, writing to Heisenberg, he said, "I'm just astonished at your attitude towards these difficult problems." He said, "I can only attribute it to your almost complete lack of understanding of physics," which wasn't too far off. But what Heisenberg had was this understanding of how things should work. He had what Einstein had. He just had a feeling for how things should work. The idea exists independently of language. The unconscious, it's a machine for operating an animal. Yeah, you do influence it, but you don't know how it works or how it goes about what it does. It's just really good at figuring things out. It's like your own personal valet. It has no interest whatsoever in anything except you. It just works for you 24 hours a day. It never sleeps. It has no interest in anything except your welfare. It doesn't think up problems. The only problems it's going to work on are the ones you give it. That's a pretty handy item to have. I don't think it's particularly interested in manners or how to. It doesn't really care about anybody but you. The only reason it has any interest in any of the people on the planet is to the extent that you interact with them and that they influence you. It doesn't give a shit about anybody else. Couldn't care less. When I'm talking to you, I don't know what I'm going to say next. I know what the subject is. I just finished reading that new biography of Grant. When he left the White House, he took his wife and they traveled around the world. And they went to India and he rode on an elephant. It was the only animal that he said anything about. And how he knew it, I don't know, except it's why killer whales don't eat people. They said, don't eat things that are smarter than you are. But what he said about elephants was, he said, I was just absolutely charmed by how intelligent they are. The old saying, an elephant never forgets. Yeah, that's true. They never forget. Why do they never forget? Because they're bloody smart, that's why. Somebody wrote a book about German guys some years ago. I think the book is just called The Desert, but I think the very opening of the book is the desert is the most loved environment. That could be true. There's something about the desert that is very moving to people. Always has been. It's certainly something I've thought about, but I don't know why. It's certainly something I've thought about, but I don't know why. It's certainly something I've thought about, but I don't know why. The desert is the most loved environment. That could be true. We don't know how huge it is or where it comes from. I don't know what I'm going to say next. I know what the subject is, but it was a guy who was at MIT, and he got stuck on a problem, and he just couldn't make any headway. He was getting very depressed. His wife was worried about him. His friends were worried about him, and then he went to bed one night, and he dreamt he was having dinner in Cambridge with John Nash. In the course of their conversation, he told Nash about this problem. Got stuck on, and Nash listened very attentively, as bright people tend to do. And he said, I think I see something. Let me have your napkin. So he wrote down some equations on the napkin and explained to the guy what he'd done. And then the guy woke up, and he turned on his little night light, and he got his little pad, and he wrote down the equations and made a couple of notes to himself, and he went back to sleep. And in the morning he woke up, and he thought, I wonder what kind of a gibberish I've scribbled down in the middle of the night. So he put his glasses on, and he got the pad, and there's this absolutely elegant solution to the problem. But that's unusual. Again, that goes against the instinct to present things not in that direct manner. It's a machine for operating an animal. The unconscious, it's a machine for operating an animal. If you didn't have it, you would just lie there. I don't care what it is, figuring out what to do, scratching your elbow. I don't think it's particularly interested in manners. Whatever it is, the unconscious is constantly monitoring your behavior and guiding you so that you won't die. The desert is the most loved environment.